A lot about the youth vote in this election cycle and how important it is to some candidates, especially Bernie Sanders. And Campus Reform asked students at St. Anselm College in New Hampshire which Democratic candidate they're going to support. And guess whose name never came up?
What candidate are you supporting in the Democratic primary?
I'm supporting Bernie Sanders, probably in the Democratic primary.
Probably Bernie Sanders.
I am supporting Tulsi Gabbard. I really like Andrew Yang and Elizabeth Warren.
I am still currently undecided, but leaning toward Pete Buttigieg.
I'm supporting Pete Buttigieg.
I think my number one right now is Pete Buttigieg.
In terms of who I'm going to vote for, I still think I'm going to vote for the right. I'm going to vote for Trump.
And joining us now is Eduardo Neret. He's the digital reporter at Campus Reform, who we saw in the video. So, Eduardo, what was the number one response that you received from students on the candidate they're supporting?
Well, it's really a variety of mixed responses. So I've been doing this for a while now for the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform. I've spoken to hundreds of students at different campuses over the last few months. And what I'm seeing now is really two different camps. You've got the strong Bernie support that we've seen for a while among younger voters, millennial voters, student voters. And now you have an interesting side, which I experienced in New Hampshire last week, of students supporting candidates like Tulsi Gabbard, like Pete Buttigieg. And the interesting thing about their support is all of those people who support the other candidates, these students are telling me it's important for them to choose a candidate who can appeal to the left, right, and center. So they like Mayor Pete because they think he has that appeal. They like these candidates who think will have a broader election support come November. So it's interesting to see this split, these two competing sides. Again, you've got the Bernie group and you've got these other side of supporters who want to appeal to electability.
Were you surprised they really didn't have a hard time here, or they were having a hard time choosing a nominee? Again, you don't hear Klobuchar, you don't hear Warren in this, and you don't hear Biden in this. What was surprising to you?
That's right. That was very surprising to me, especially that you didn't hear many Warrens. I was out there for several hours, didn't hear too many of those. Biden is someone who I have not heard on, not only in last week's video on that campus, but on campuses across the country. So that's a bad sign for Biden. We see him struggling with the rest of the country. That's also true for college students. But again, like the rest of the Democratic Party, like you just alluded to, college students don't really know who they want to put their support behind. It's pretty mixed across the board. It's different wherever you go. And unfortunately for the Democrats, that means that they're going to have a long, drawn-out election process. So we see support divided across the board here.
There is still some time before November, but we are seeing some students being active on social media, making their voices known about which candidate they're supporting. Do you think we'll actually see them in the polls showing up to vote in November?
I think we will. Look, millennials are the largest voter group right now that we have in this country. There are more millennial voters than any other group out there. And what we're seeing on both sides, both millennials and young students who may support Trump, or millennials and young students who may support the other side, may support Bernie Sanders, is that they're very passionate. We see these large crowds on campuses, rallies held across the country, and it's important to realize why voters are getting so excited. Especially, let's focus on the Democratic side. So we've noticed here at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform that they're supporting candidates like Bernie Sanders because they're interested in hearing about loan debt relief. They're interested in hearing about this free stuff, free Medicare for all and things of that nature. And then also, it's very prevalent on their campuses. So these students are in a lot of classrooms where professors tout socialism. They sort of bash capitalism. And so when you have that combination of factors, students are going to get really excited for a candidate who's preaching the message that they hear about every single day on campus.
What about the concern about Bernie Sanders, as you know, Eduardo, proclaimed socialist? Is that a concern for our youth supporting that?
It is very much a concern. Look, you see the polls, students and young people have very strong support. They have very favorable views towards socialism. But the one good thing is that those same polls show that these same number of people, if not more, are unable to define what socialism is. So the good thing about that is it tells me that these students think they like socialism. They think they like the idea of free stuff, of free school, of Medicare for all. But the good thing is they're not too sure what it is. And when they find out about what it is, I've done videos on campuses where I tell students, hey, you're going to have to pay for this. Somebody's taxes are going to have to go up. And they sort of take a step back and say, actually, I don't know if I support that. So they're open-minded. That is the one positive here, that they're willing to look at the whole issue. And I think when presented to them, they're really going to rethink their support for socialism.
Hey, you're going to have to tell them, Eduardo, hey, it's not free. We're going to depend on you. Let them know. Someone's paying for it.
When they actually do figure that out, do any of these students consider voting for President Trump?
So it's little by little. I don't think we're there yet. But what was interesting last week in New Hampshire, I did talk to a couple students who told me, hey, I really do like Bernie Sanders, but with the way the economy is going right now, I may have to vote for President Trump. So there is a small portion of the voter base, both in terms of younger students and I think the rest of the country. Look, we saw it in 2016. There were people who were fed up with the establishment. There were people who wanted an outsider. And so I think you could see some of these, maybe further left socialist young students kind of be picked off by President Trump if he can give them the right message.
That is Eduardo Neret, digital reporter at Campus Reform. Eduardo, can you come back for us? I think I like having you on here.
I'd love to anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to pull you back in. Eduardo, thanks so much.
I know. I can't wait to see what video he's got going next.
My thing is, I feel like as Eduardo was pointing out, that they don't quite know what socialism is. And I feel like if there was a way to blast out, hey, this candidate supports this, and you just pop it up on a tweet, I feel like they would garner that information quicker. You know what I mean? To know who you're supporting. So maybe this opens up a whole new doorway of how you showcase your candidates, how Trump does this, how Bernie Sanders does this, et cetera. So it's just something to think about, because again, educating yourself is going to be the biggest factor when you're making your vote, making your decision.
As opposed to just eliminating student debt and loans and
hey, look, I like free stuff. Everyone. Who doesn't? But we got to know that money comes somewhere.
That's right.